Breaking news tonight. Busted. The so-called glamorous Ketamine Queen. Did she sell the deadly dose to beloved Friends star Mathew Perry? At this hour, federal indictments going down. Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. Thank you for being with us.
Two doctors, two drug dealers, and Perry's live-in assistant charged in the death of Friends star Mathew Perry. Prosecutors claim the defendants knew Perry was struggling with his addiction, but were more concerned with making money than his well-being.
The so-called Ketamine Queen. Let me tell you something, lady. That Birkin bag and all those Gucci clothes you're wearing, that ain't gonna get you out of this, girl. There she goes. Number one, why is she in a fancy bathtub with her clothes on? And why does she have what I believe to be a $40,000 Birkin bag on her foot? Somebody's showing off. Well, you know what? They don't sell, oh my good, what is that? Wait. One, does she have on a bra, or is that money stuffed into a glass? Well, they don't have Birkin and they don't have Gucci behind bars. I hope you like the color orange. Get used to it. This woman living in the lap of luxury on the backs of drug addicts, and likely been doing it for years in her rarefied Hollywood environment, to all the A-list celebs who are now quaking in their shoes that they're going to be found out next. You don't think they've got this woman's little black book? Oh yeah, they do. So who is the so-called Ketamine Queen, and why is she living off the misery of others? You know, sometimes people kid themselves into thinking certain drugs are glamorous, you know, like cocaine or ecstasy, designer drugs, ketamine. It's not glamorous. It ended Mathew Perry under the water, dead in a hot tub. After years of fighting addiction, lying about it, hiding it, paying tens of thousands of dollars to rehab, only the best, the Betty Ford clinic, the this clinic, the that clinic, the this specialist, covering it up from the world so he could maintain his Hollywood image. He suffered and died. And this woman is sitting in her clawfoot tub with a Birkin bag on her foot. Woman, you know what? It's not glamorous. Let me just kick it off right now to Dr. William Maroney. Dr. Maroney, listen to this.
Engine 23, Rescue 23, EMS 9. Engine 23, Rescue 23, EMS 9, all on radio. Respond to the drowning. Process Surfview Drive. Engine 23, Rescue 23, EMS 9.
Federal prosecutors allege that Perry first obtains ketamine from an unscrupulous doctor aiming to take advantage of the actor's addiction issues. Dr. Salvador Plasencia teaches Perry's live-in assistant Kenneth Iwamasa how to administer the drug and provides ketamine to both Perry and Iwamasa at exorbitant prices. When the drugs become too expensive, Perry and Iwamasa turn to street dealers, including Jasveen Sangha, dubbed the Ketamine Queen.
You know, to Dr. William Maroney joining me, renowned medical examiner, toxicologist, pathologist, opioid treatment expert, and author of American Narcan. That would have saved the life of Prince and so many other stars and people from opioid overdose. Dr. Maroney, somehow it's the misconception has flourished, as it did about Mathew Perry, that ketamine and other so-called designer drugs are glamorous. They're not. All of those abusers end up in one place, a cold slab in your office. Explain.
ketamine is never really meant to be self-administered, and it's never really meant to be used in a family setting or an ambulatory setting. It's a hallucinogen. It causes sedation, and the FDA-approved use of ketamine is once a month. In his last day, according to testimony, three times he was given ketamine injections the day he died. It's meant to be given once a month under supervision during therapy. Ketamine is a plan, and this is so out of control.
Okay, you know
This
what?
is
I
so
appreciate
rogue.
all of that, but what I asked you, Doctor, my longtime
Yes.
colleague and friend, I asked you, is it glamorous? Because that's the way it's portrayed. Hold on. If you can see your screen, can you show me the dealer, the glam ketamine queen? Because she makes it all look so good. Okay, I've seen that picture. Do you have another picture you can show me? Okay, there. That right there. How can you, it's hard to look at her and reconcile that woman right there, according to prosecutors, according to the state, has heaped misery and suffering on so many people so she could line her pockets. Her, right there. Perry is dead, thanks to her, according to prosecutors, and all of his friends. And I don't mean that as a play on words. You've got this longtime friend, live-in assistant, giving him the dope. That's what it is, dope. Until he dies. Everybody knew he was struggling with addiction. Everybody knew that. Does this woman care? No. No drug dealer cares. What does it do to a person, Dr. Maroney?
Well, at higher doses than needed, it sedates you, it drives your heart rate up, it can give you arrhythmias that make you susceptible to sudden death, and it prevents you from moving because it's an anesthetic. Nothing can change the classification. It's called a dissociative anesthetic. Why would anybody take an anesthetic? You can't think, you can't move, and eventually you can't breathe. So the whole problem is people think they can get away with it. These people are sold the idea that this is the answer. At one point, it could have been heroin, it could have been cocaine, could have been alcohol. Substitute ketamine, and they say, okay, when you need more, give me a call. After one shot,
well, wait, hold on. I want to follow up with what you just
two.
said, Dr. Maroney. Hold on, Dr. Maroney, because
Yes.
that's exactly what happened right here. I'm trying to drink in everything you're saying. I'm just a trial lawyer. You're the professional, the toxicologist, the pathologist, and you've even written the book about use of opioids and drugs and how to save people's lives. To Dr. Bethany Marshall, finally somebody brings down the hammer on this drug operation. And this is not, according to sources, the first person that has lost their lives to these very people. Listen, Dr. Bethany.
The two lead defendants in this case are defendants Salvador Plasencia and defendant Jasveen Sangha. Defendant Placentia was a medical doctor. He worked with another medical doctor, defendant Mark Chavez, to obtain ketamine. He then worked with Mr. Perry's live-in assistant, defendant Kenneth Iwamasa, to distribute that ketamine to Mr. Perry. Sangha and the broker, defendant Fleming, saw this as an opportunity to profit off of Mr. Perry. She sold approximately 50 vials of ketamine for approximately $11,000 in cash. She worked with a broker, defendant Eric Fleming, and also the live-in assistant, defendant Iwamasa, to distribute this ketamine.
A tangled web of dopers. You know, Dr. Bethany Marshall is joining us, a high-profile psychoanalyst, author of Deal Breaker. Dr. Bethany, I'm just thinking of all the drug lords and dopers that I have prosecuted, put behind bars over all the years. You know, this woman we're looking at, who's so glamorous and her high-end lifestyle, she had just traveled to Tokyo, Europe, all over the world. Have you, Bethany, did you grow up on a farm? You went with your parents all around the world as a missionary, correct?
Yes, grew up in Central West Africa, Congo.
Okay, then you've seen a tick, I assume. You know, a blood-sucking
Oh,
tick.
absolutely. Yes.
That's who she is. Every time I
Yeah.
look at her, I see a tick. And they get bigger and fatter as they suck the blood of their victim. And that is what she was doing with Mathew Perry. And I guarantee you, he's not the first.
You know, she was going out selling one more vial and one more vial to go out and buy one more Hermes bag or Gucci pair of shoes. Or, you know, she was just really satisfying her own greed. And what makes me so sad, Nancy, is that people suffering from substance abuse disorders are extraordinarily vulnerable. Mathew Perry was vulnerable. He was chasing that next high. His brain was craving the addiction. He had a long history of substance abuse disorder. And by the way, so do about 15% of all Americans over the age of 12 have suffered from a substance abuse disorder in this past year. And they all
Can you say
have
that again?
people like
What? I thought I didn't hear you correctly. What?
more than 15% of all Americans over the age of 12 have suffered from a substance abuse disorder in this past year. Of those Americans, only 6.7% of them ever received treatment.
Listen to this, everybody. Mike McCormick joining me, owner, lead investigator, MCM, M Mother, C Charlie, M Mother Investigations, former LAPD, over 25 years. Listen to this, Mike. It is reported that the Ketamine Queen supplied 25 vials of ketamine 4 days to Perry, just 4 days before his death, and boasted, as she sold it to him, as it being a high-quality drug, adding it's unmarked, but it's amazing. Now, immediately after his death is reported, she messaged her co-conspirators, according to the state, stating, delete all our messages. And then she goes off on a whirlwind tour. I think it was Japan, but flying off on a private jet. Delete all your messages. Destroy the evidence. She knew Mike McCormick, and there's no way in HELL that there's not a string of other Hollywood celebs that are her clients.
That's true. There's going to be probably a lot more suspects brought into this death of Mathew Perry as time goes by. I don't think it's limited to just the amount of people that have been in the news in the last few days. I think there's going to be more. I think the assistant, Kenneth, definitely didn't do his job. He should have brought in the family members and made them aware of what the extent of the problem is, and may have been able to actually save Mathew from this situation, from dying of an overdose.
But instead of trying to save him, Mike, everyone enabled him with friends like those. I mean, listen.
Perry turned to a street dealer, Eric Fleming, who sourced his ketamine from a drug trafficker known as the Ketamine Queen, Jasveen Sangha. The ketamine supplied by Sangha would ultimately be the dose that took Mathew Perry's life. Sangha knew that the ketamine she supplied could be deadly. Despite this knowledge, she continued to sell ketamine and methamphetamine throughout Los Angeles.
Now joining me, high-profile lawyer, former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani, president, West Coast Trial Lawyers, author of Harvard to Hashtag. Nima, it was slow in coming, but finally the feds hand down a major indictment. I'm happy they did it, but do you think if they had acted earlier, Perry's life could have been saved, and probably the lives of many others?
Well, probably, Nancy. Let's not forget that Sangha was responsible for another drug-related death in 2019, Cody McKellen, and it was ketamine that she provided that killed him that same day. And the political reality is that they spent a lot more time investigating this case because of who the victim was. You have a celebrity victim, obviously got a lot of attention, and that's why you had federal resources as well as local resources, LAPD, put on this case to bring, hopefully, the perpetrators to justice.
They distributed approximately 20 vials of ketamine to Mr. Perry in exchange for $55,000 in cash. Defendant Placentia saw this as an opportunity to profit off of Mr. Perry. He wrote in a text message in September 2023, quote, "I wonder how much this moron will pay." He also stated in text messages that he wanted to be Mr. Perry's sole source of supply. He wrote in a text message that he wanted to be Mr. Perry's, quote, "go-to for drugs."
I wonder how much this moron will pay. Let's find out. Text messages reveal the motivation of those charged in Mathew Perry's death.
Joining us right now, Lauren Conlon, investigative reporter and star of Crime Time on YouTube. Lauren Conlon, thank you for being with us. So while they're literally killing him like a tick, just sucking his blood, taking his money, as they know his condition is, quote, spiraling out of control, they say that in their communications, not me, their words, not mine. They actually call him a moron. Mathew Perry, who was a child tennis prodigy who goes to LA and lands on his feet, ending up with the role of a lifetime on Friends. That moron? Who said that, Lauren Conlon?
Yes, this is Dr. Salvador Plasencia who said this. And Nancy, let's not forget that 16 days before Mathew Perry's death, Salvador Plasencia shot up Mathew Perry with a very large dose of ketamine, which caused Mathew Perry to freeze up. And Dr. Plasencia said to Kenneth Iwamasa, we better not do that again. Well, we know that that was not the case. And just very quickly, Nancy, going back to Jasveen Sangha, as Nima said, she was found to be responsible for the 2019 death of a 33-year-old young man, Cody McLaury, in LA. And also, Mathew Perry was said to have met her in rehab along with Brooke Mueller.
Guys, speaking of Mathew Perry, quote, freezing up, listen.
Defendant Placentia knew full well the danger of what he was doing. In fact, on one occasion, he injected Mr. Perry with ketamine, and he saw Mr. Perry freeze up and his blood pressure spike. Despite that, he left additional vials of ketamine for defendant Iwamasa to administer to Mr. Perry. Of course, defendant Iwamasa had no medical training to speak of.
Dr. William Moroney joining me, renowned toxicologist and pathologist, author of American Narcan, who has devoted his career to fighting opioid and substance abuse. Dr. Moroney, I've heard it stated in several publications and several points of evidence that they had observed or knew of Mathew Perry, quote, freezing up. I'm not sure what that means, but it didn't stop them from giving him nearly 30 vials of ketamine just before his death.
What it actually comes down to is ketamine is an anesthetic. So if you give too much, you don't just relax somebody, they do freeze up. You freeze somebody up at the side of their pool or in their kitchen, you don't have a crash cart. You don't have anything else. You just have to wait it out or possibly call 911. They were lucky that they didn't kill him earlier, but the end result is the same because of the disregard for life. as they gave him more, he became more dependent. And then the final day when he died, he got 3 injections. This is a drug that's approved to get once a month from a psychiatrist, and they were giving it daily, which is more dangerous than anything.
Back to him freezing up. That is what? Going into a seizure? What is that?
Muscle stiffness and the early stages of anesthesia. Anesthesia, making him fall asleep on purpose, because that's how we use it when we take people to surgery.
How exactly did the scheme work? Listen.
Dr. Salvador Plasencia obtains ketamine for Perry from Dr. Mark Chavez. Chavez writes a fraudulent prescription for an unwitting patient and lies to wholesale ketamine distributors to obtain both liquid and lozenge forms of ketamine for Dr. Placencia, who in turn dispenses them to Perry on at least 7 occasions, despite noting Perry's addiction is, quote, spiraling out of control. When Placencia is ordered to turn over Perry's medical records, the doctor falsifies and alters several reports to show a purported treatment plan for Perry.
Okay, back to Lauren Conlon joining us from Primetime Crime on YouTube. Lauren, so let me understand this. They state amongst themselves that his addiction is spiraling out of control. Their words, not mine. But they continue and they call it a treatment plan. Why did they name it a treatment plan? Sangha is just basically a dope dealer, just like a doper on the street. A couple of blocks from the elementary school. She's no different. So what was the so-called treatment plan?
This is absolutely absurd, Nancy. And let's not forget that Mathew Perry just started working with these doctors a month prior to his death. So this quote unquote treatment plan, it was all made up. They literally just did this for money. And it also was stated in the press conference that these doctors were selling him vials that they paid $12 for $2,000. And Kenneth Iwamasa confirmed with the LAPD and the DEA that the 3 days before Mathew Perry's death, he was administering between 6 and 8 doses of ketamine a day. And, you know, like Dr. Maroney said, the last day he was alive, he had 3. But the days leading up to it, it was between 6 and 8 doses. And if the doctors prescribed that, oh boy, I would be shocked.
Dr. Bethany, the price differential, you can get the same amount of ketamine on the street for $12, and he's paying $2,000 for 1 vial. Dr. Bethany, speaking of blood-sucking ticks, not only do they aid him, enable him to his own death, but they make fun of him, overcharging him, gouging him, but then they call him names and make fun of how much he will pay in their texts.
Nancy, they had disregard and disdain for them. But who are the morons? They killed their cash cow in 1 month, and now they're going to spend years behind bars. So I think what really upsets me about this situation, I'm thinking about a very wealthy patient in my Beverly Hills practice struggling with addiction, and everybody tried to provide drugs for him. I would get him into rehab, then all of a sudden the house manager would come in and just leave drugs around the house. He would get rid of the house manager, then he would get a new girlfriend who then would addict and hook him again. So he would take her shopping for jewelry. I mean, he was a mark sitting out there in society because of his substance abuse. So people who have these horrible addictions like Mathew Perry, the people around them are blood-sucking ticks. They tend to attract a whole network of people who just see dollar signs all over the place, and they do not care about the patient. Did you notice that picture of Dr. Placencia has UCLA healthcare on his lab jacket? UCLA on his lab coat. There it is, UCLA Health System. So under the guise of being a medical expert, of caring, of the oath of do no harm, he is actually extracting money from somebody, worsening that person's addiction, knowing that that person's going to die. And so stupid and moronic, he thinks he's not going to get caught.
Dr. Salvador Plasencia obtains ketamine for Perry from Dr. Mark Chavez, despite noting Perry's addiction is, quote, spiraling out of control.
Please join us on our mission to find missing people, especially children, to solve unsolved homicides. If you're on the go, catch us on your favorite podcast app where you can get all of our content where we, in our own way, seek justice.
One doctor notes Mathew Perry's addiction as spiraling out of control. Still, Perry has sold 20 vials of ketamine totaling $55,000.
And tonight, finally, federal indictments go down. I'm thrilled about the indictments, but I wonder if they have been handed down against this, as I'm calling them, blood-sucking ticks that lived off Mathew Perry and others. If it had happened earlier, could his life and others have been saved? Right now, I'm just glad the charges occurred. Now, we're talking about other potential victims. Listen.
Dr. Salvador Plasencia's exorbitant prices push Mathew Perry to seek a new ketamine source. Assistant Kenneth Iwamasa reaches out to several street dealers. Eric Fleming agrees to a deal and turns to his supplier, Jasveen Sangha, for ketamine from her North Hollywood stash house. Fleming pays Sangha from the drugs with cash from Iwamasa. Sangha is well aware of the dangers of ketamine. One of her previous buyers, Cody McLaury, died of an overdose on the drug 4 years earlier.
Okay, you know what? All that fake hair and that push-up bra, that's not going to help you behind bars, woman. Just get ready. Savor your last moments of freedom, because it's not going to last unless the feds cut you some sweetheart deal. We were just talking about a guy named Cody McLaury, also dead. Listen to this.
Jasveen Sangha sells Cody McLaury several vials of ketamine. Later that same day, McLaury's family finds him dead. A family member tells Sangha her ketamine caused McLaury's overdose death, and Sangha Googles, "Can ketamine be listed as a cause of death?" Nevertheless, Sangha continues peddling ketamine and other drugs from her stash house.
You know, that's the thing. Dr. William Moroney, renowned toxicologist, Dr. Moroney, dopers don't care. The family goes to Sangha and says, "You did this to Cody." And she's like, "Oh, okay, Google. Can ketamine be listed as a COD? Not, oh my stars, I'm never doing this again. It's had this horrible effect. Cody is dead." No, she just wants to find out, is basically she going to be implicated in the death of Cody McLaury? And then she jets off to Japan with Birkin bags on both arms. I mean, really?
Ketamine is listed as cause of death all across America. Fentanyl is listed as cause of death all across America. Methamphetamine, we are very specific about cause of death. We mention the chemical if it's a chemical, and we mention the medicine if it was prescribed and it was ethical. There are 5 manners of death, and his death is considered an accident because the CDC says drug overdoses are accidents. But we'll have to see if in a court that's a different definition, that it was caused because somebody else did the injections. So there's a play between the advocate.
Right.
Clearly, always, ketamine will be listed as a cause of death, always.
Nima Rahmani, former federal prosecutor turned trial lawyer. Nima, why is it that all the so-called rich, glamorous people get sweetheart deals? Why is that? If there is a sweetheart deal on this blood-sucking tick, Sangha, I'm going to do a backflip. You've got Cody McLaury, that we know of, and now Mathew Perry. What, are they going to cut a deal with this woman?
I don't think so, Nancy. Like I said, there's 2 drug-related deaths, and it's not just the ketamine we're talking about, which is a Schedule 3, and even though cause death, it has a 15-year max. It's that methamphetamine. There are very significant sentencing guidelines. So because of the meth, which is Schedule 2, she's looking at a potential life sentence. If the feds cut her a deal, it's only because she's going to identify her source. I don't think that was medical grade ketamine. And obviously, we know in drug cases, prosecutors, they want to work their way up the chain. And ketamine is a huge problem in LA right now.
Perry's live-in assistant admitted to repeatedly injecting the actor with ketamine without medical training and administered multiple injections the very day Perry died.
One celeb after the next, dead from overdose, probably drugs given to them by friends. Listen to this.
Now an emergency. Hi, how you doing? This is security from Beverly Hilton. Hi, what's going on? I need the paramedics. Apparently, I got a 46-year-old female found in the bathrooms. That's all I've got right now, but they're requesting paramedics. Oh, okay. Female found in the bathroom. What room is she in? I'm not sure. She fell or she was in the bathroom with the water. 434. I'm sorry. That's room 434. Yes. Okay. And that's not east, west, or anything else. It's room 434. Yeah. Okay. And you don't know if she's conscious of breathing at all? Apparently, she wasn't breathing, and she's 46-year-old. She was not breathing. Yeah.
Whitney, Houston, that's a 911 call found in a Lux hotel submerged in water. Why? Because of drugs. And there's so many others. Amy Winehouse, a brilliant shooting star, dead. Of course, Anna Nicole Smith, all of her friends fed her drugs until the very end, leaving behind children. Chris Farley, the funny guy. Everybody loves Farley. People took advantage of him until he was dead. Heath Ledger, the Joker, leaving behind a little girl. Of course, let's just start at the beginning with this guy. He had a fishing tackle box full of drugs. Who gave him that? Janis Joplin. What a star. OD. And of course, no list is complete without him, Belushi, the ultimate funny guy. Lil Peep, let's don't forget him. Kurt Cobain, Nirvana, leaving behind Francis Bean. And of course, one of the biggest stars ever, Michael Jackson. Like just a brilliant, burning talent, dead. And of course, my favorite, Prince. He could have lived if he had been given a Narcan injection. That didn't happen. Everyone stood by, lived off his money, and kept feeding him drugs. River Phoenix, gone so young at the Viper Room. Of course, Whitney, voice like an angel. Vern Troyer. You can't help but love this guy. Wrestler, China. We don't even have enough time to go through all the celebrities that have lost their lives, not just because of drugs, but because of a tight little circle of so-called friends. And back to Mike McCormick joining us, owner, lead investigator, MCM Investigations, former LAPD, over 25 years at mcminvestigations.com. Mike, that's the way it is in Hollywood, and the beat goes on. The day after Mathew Perry's dead, everybody's getting their supplies from their friends. It never ends.
It never ends because of the suppliers and the people involved want the drugs. I don't know how you end it.
You know, to Dr. Bethany Marshall joining us, renowned psychoanalyst, you would think that after Cody McClaughry was killed, that the so-called Ketamine Queen would go, you know what, it's not worth it. How many more Birkin bags do I need? How many more private planes do I need to take to Japan or Europe? It's not worth my clients dying. It didn't stop her. Why?
Nancy, she's homicidal. I mean, we really have to think about that. That one picture where she has the red lipstick, black t-shirt, straight hair. Do you know it says R.I.P. on her t-shirt, rest in peace, with a picture of Kobe Bryant underneath? I mean, perhaps it's just, I don't know, a designer t-shirt right there, R.I.P., cross, guy with black glasses. I mean, it tells me that on some level she really knew what she was doing. She's wearing her crime. She's wearing her intentions. That watch, that beautiful top, that Hermes bag, you know, that is the blood of her clients. The blood of her clients, Nancy. I think it's easy to glamorize along with her that she has these beautiful outfits and the shoes and this, that, and the other. She has sucked this money, as so many people do with addicts, out of her client to their death. This even happens in the homeless population, Nancy, where family members will addict homeless people so that they can take their SSI checks. It happens from high to low, low to high, all over the place.
According to Mathew Perry, he had been clean for 19 months, but the Daily Mail reports the actor died from an overdose of the party drug ketamine. According to the autopsy report, a detective who attended the scene of Perry's death said, quote, "During my investigation, no alcohol, illicit drugs, or drug paraphernalia were found," unquote. The Daily Mail also claims the 54-year-old was getting injections of the male hormone testosterone, and an unnamed female associate claimed the injections were causing him to be angry and mean for the last couple of weeks.
Dr. William Maroney, if you could put this in regular people talk, in a nutshell, I've read your autopsy reports. Like one sentence can be 2 paragraphs. Boil it down, boil it down. So Mathew Perry took the ketamine and then he goes into a euphoric sedation state and his body can't fight back when he goes under the water?
There's high dose and low dose. You start going into sedation and euphoria, but it doesn't stop. As the dose builds up in you, that's where you go into frozen muscles. You can't breathe. Your body locks up, because that's what it's really meant to do as an anesthetic. It is a process.
So a euphoric sedation, and I wonder if he could feel himself going underwater and there was nothing he could do about it. Or, look, there he is in the hot tub. To Nima Rahmani, high-profile lawyer, listen to this. Sangha was a, quote, large volume drug dealer, and in the complaint, we find out that she would sell ketamine lollipops as an add-on because his orders were so large. Now, after seizing her phone, police apparently have found footage of her on her phone, that's pretty arrogant, cooking up ketamine. She has videoed herself cooking up ketamine. And it just, there's pictures she posts online, for instance, of her in a private jet having caviar and champagne. And just before her arrest, she was sharing photos on Insta of her with her new purple hairdo. She could not have cared less.
Well, Nancy, she's on a stripper pole there with a money gun. But, you're right. Ketamine is a big-time party drug here in Hollywood, and it's not given with an IV at a party. So what is typically done is users or addicts, they cook it and they transform it into a white powdery substance like cocaine. So when you said folks are sniffing each other at these parties, they're sniffing cocaine and ketamine and not each other. Sometimes it's even put in nasal spray, but that's primarily how it's used and abused in the party scene here. So the fact that Sangha is one of the world's dumbest criminals who's videotaping herself processing these types of drugs isn't surprising, because I've seen criminal defendants do all sorts of stupid things.
It's kind of hard to take in her and her glamour lifestyle, and you juxtapose that against Mathew Perry feeling himself going underwater, and he's so immobile he can't fight back. But Dr. Bethany Marshall on Insta, this woman posts herself enjoying caviar in a private jet lounge. Just after Perry dies, she's sipping lychee martinis at the Mandarin Oriental in Tokyo, each suite about $2,000 a night. A few weeks after that, she's sunning herself by a pool in Playa del Carmen in Mexico, sharing selfies, drinking more cocktails. It goes on and on and on. When she finally touches back down in the U.S., she was lapping up the LA lifestyle, having IV drips and late night parties and, quote, sound healing sessions. Help me out, Dr. Bethany.
Sounds very LA to me. You know, she was corrupted by greed and lack of concern for others. But Nancy, we see this with Big Pharma. We see this with the Sackler family. Let's throw them on the trash heap of people who have become so greedy and their lives got so big and they earned billions of dollars. And because of that, they did not care about the millions of Americans who died. These people who use drugs to have control over others, it's like they're stealing, it's like they're creeping through a window in another person's house, taking the diamonds out of the safe, going and just gloating over the diamonds that they've gotten. They don't care about the house. They don't care about the people in it. They don't care about the neurobiology of addiction. And they don't really care about the wave of devastation that goes outward in this person's life. Mathew Perry had many people who love him. The public love him. We love him. We're talking about him today. But there are children, nieces, nephews, parents, cousins, church members, people he was doing business with. It's widespread devastation that, you know, Sangha really didn't really care about that. She just wanted her lychee martini and that was it. Talk about, again, moronic. It really is moronic behavior.
You know, we haven't even gotten to the doctor, the drug lord posing as a doctor in his UCLA Health jacket and all the others involved in Mathew Perry's death. But this is where it leaves me. Those people that are charged by the feds finally, they're no different than dopers selling a $25 rock out on the street. No different. They just clean up better. We stop and remember an American hero, police officer Paul Tracy, Waltham PD, Massachusetts, struck and killed by a suspect vehicle. Served Waltham PD 28 years, survived by a grieving wife, Kristen, and children, Danica and Tyler. American hero, Officer Paul Tracy. Thank you to all of our guests being with us tonight, highlighting the devastation of addiction. But especially thank you for being with us and our new MSM family for being with us tonight and every night. Nancy Grace signing off. I'll see you tomorrow night, 6 and 9 o'clock, sharp Eastern. And until then, good night, friend. Please join us on our mission to find missing people, especially children, to solve unsolved homicides. If you're on the go, catch us on your favorite podcast app where you can get all of our content where we, in our own way, seek justice.